Why, hello everyone. Welcome back to the amazing, splendiferous Dardigan Show. Donamite, congrats on being first in chat. Slidonte, congrats on being second. How is everyone? Alright, I'm gonna try to beat this game tonight. I really want to be done with it. You saw Hereditary today. It was meh. I know I do not pay enough attention to movies these days. I know next to nothing except a handful of big releases. Welcome back, Sarayu. Slidonte, I'll get to my thoughts on E3 once more people are in chat. That way I don't have to repeat myself. Because I get the feeling we got a pretty good amount of stuff to talk about tonight instead of, unlike last night where it was E3, where it was EA's deal and they completely, tossed a hot load in our face. Yeah, quite a few interesting topics for tonight. It's been an interesting day overall for me, actually. My life was almost felt like a sitcom today, actually, like a really bad, cheesy sitcom. I'll explain why in just a minute.
Magic door to the brain.
Oh, that's not right. Alright, that's good. So we're all good to go. What happened at the EA conference? Not really a whole lot, and the most notable thing was the revival, massive air quotes around revival, of a classic game being made into mobile. Red alert. You're watching E3, but Bethesda's conference is in 30 minutes. Well, you can switch back and forth. Let me go ahead and load up the game so you guys don't have to stand there and sit there and look at my stupid desktop. Yes, I want. Don't worry, guys. I'll be talking about what I saw all the big announcements from E3 today. I'll be talking about all of them before we actually get to streaming tonight, or playing. That is, I mean. But I'm just waiting for like a good 40 to 50 people in chat because I will definitely get asked about the same questions over and over again if I don't. To fuck his vampire? I wonder if this game is actually set in the same universe as Life is Strange. Dontnod seems to be really keen on making their universe, a story universe. So I wonder if this game takes place in it. It could. There's no reason why it couldn't, actually. You're finally early? Yeah, we're just getting started, dude. Right on time. I had a rather weird day today at work. I'm just gonna pause this now that we're in the game. Let me tell you why. I was, some of you know, I was on vacation for like the past week. That's why I was able to get the Detroit video out so quickly. So I was gone from work that entire week. And while I was, let me state something else first. I live really close to where I work, so I usually walk to work. It's literally just like a block away from me. And everyone usually knows that. But, so I was gone for work for about a week. And during that week, there was someone who died walking on that same route that I use. And apparently, because it's so well known that I walk that route, everyone thought while I was gone that I was dead. Like, I came back to work this morning, and people were legitimately surprised that I was alive. I was like, this can't be real. This is surreal. This is out of a sitcom. This is what happens in sitcoms, not real life. I am dead serious. I had people coming up to me like, I thought you were dead. I was like, no, because I had not heard anything about some dude dying on the road, getting hit by a car, which is what happened. Poor dude. My thoughts go out to him, whoever it was, but everyone thought I was dead because of that. No one bothered calling me, and there are people at work who have my phone number, but they all just, oh my god, he's dead, did you hear? So it was really strange. I was like, I should have played it up. I should be like, yeah, I'm dead. Got that severance pay. No, I didn't pull a Kenny. It was completely unintentional. I was just surprised. This is the kind of thing you would see in like a really crap, forgettable episode of a really boring sitcom. 100 bits. But are you actually dead right now? That would be the start of a horror movie, actually. It was just a weird day overall for me. I just sit multiple times throughout the day. People would come by and like, holy shit, you're alive. I pulled the Shepherd from Mass Effect 2. So, now that that weird story's out of the way, let's warm up by talking about E3 for a bit. First and foremost, congratulations to all the weebs out there. You've got a game where you're going to be fighting as Goku, Rubber Arm Dude, Luffy, whatever his name is, and Naruto Ninja Guy. That's a thing that's happened. Your fanfiction wet dream has happened. So congrats. I'm sure big claps to everyone around. You made it happen. Hopefully that's, not total hot garbage. The Shadows Die Twice game, I instantly needed to be masturbated after I watched that trailer. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. More, thank you. Apparently this is the year, or this is the West Virginia's time to shine, because there are 2 games that I know of coming out that are set in it, which is very strange. Ross Legends, thank you for your 14 months in a row, dude. Time flies when you're watching Dardigan. Thank you. Let's see, what else? Halo's getting a new game. I'm sure we're all excited for that. Is really anyone still excited for Halo or Gears of War? Yeah, I'm guessing, well, if you only own an Xbox, I guess yeah, you'd have to be, wouldn't you? Battletoads? Sure. That could be a thing that could work if Rare is Rare making it though. That's the question. Is Rare making Battletoads? If it is, curb your enthusiasm. And what else was there? What? Devil May Cry 5? Yeah, that looked like that looked to be on point. Hope after the last DMC pissed everyone off. Hope this game seems like to be okay. You got it right. You got the attitude down. It's people having fun, not being libertines in a demon-infested world. You got that right. Good job. And it's about Nero. I don't really have any problem with it. I never played Devil May Cry 4, so I don't know much about Nero. Cyberpunk 2077 got another CG trailer, so it doesn't really tell us anything about the game. It looked nice, but still, I'll wait for actual gameplay. And that covers all the big bases, right? Metro Exodus, they didn't show any boob rendering technology. We're still waiting for that. That news will come eventually. I am prepared to give Metro Exodus a really nice review, a really nice sin video, and a big reduction in sins if they somehow mention me in their video by having like some really creepy guy saying these are the best tits in the world in reference to like some strip club in the game. I'll be like, yeah, you cheeky fuckers, you get like 100 sins redacted from the video if that happens at any point. And there's a Life is Strange 1-episode special that's free spin-off coming at the end of the month, which I will probably be doing a video on. Alright, I think we've covered all of our E3 bases for today. Oh, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider got another video. Looks very Shadow of the Tomb Raider-y. We are now excited. Alright guys, we have a game to beat. I really want to beat this game tonight. I want to get to work on the script and bang this sucker out. So, without further ado, last night we defeated the vampire hunter bastard by killing a couple of innocent people to power ourselves up because we briefly turned dark. Grimdark, in fact. And now it is time to hopefully do the final sequence of the game, whatever it is. I am at a loss to figure out how this game ends at this point. There's not really much to go on. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts is Kingdom Hearts. There's not really much to say about it. I am somewhat disappointed that it seems like Wreck-It Ralph is just a summon in that game and not an actual world you'll be visiting. It's like Dante. 33 months in a row, dude. You're approaching 3 years. Thank you, dude. Thank you very much for that. Alright. I need to get my recording software up. I completely forgot about that. There you go. Alright, so let us continue our adventure. Cornhole isn't a video game. I thought you were talking about some really weird game. It's a bunny. When you actually mentioned that in the Discord. I have never played it though. So my answer still remains no, I have not. Alright. Let us begin. Hopefully we can finish this game tonight. I really want it done. Yeah, I had no idea what you were talking about, and I wasn't prepared to Google it either, because Cornhole could bring up some really weird images on Google, and I was at work. Alright, we have to go back to the... Yeah, that's right, the theater. That's what we have to do. Simple enough. We can go right out our window and get there quickly. Yeah, I have actually refrained from killing very many people in this game, when you actually look at it. There's only been 4 in this district, and that's really it. I haven't killed anyone else in any other district, you know, by eating them. That guy died on his own because the district got to critical, as did she. I didn't kill either of these two. The district got critical and they just disappeared. You can still fight them as vampires or werewolves now, though. Alright, this will take us, we just go up and to our left, and we'll be there. You didn't miss the end? Yeah, we hopefully will be near the end soon enough.
I'll put an end to it.
Man, after watching stuff like the stuff at E3, what we're getting next year, this game really starts to show how crap it is now. Why am I doing no damage to you? Yeah, we really don't need to keep fighting all these guys, do we? Whoa, camera. Whoa, camera. Whoa, whoa, horse. I'm just sure that was a way through. No, I'm not sending Tom Clancy's Division. Here, let me answer this question. I'm not sending any Tom Clancy game unless it's a new Splinter Cell. Alright, that should answer any further Tom Clancy Ubisoft game questions. This should not be locked. Oh, it's because there's an enemy right next to me. Well, I'm dead. I'm back. I'm stuck in a corner getting wailed on. And it can't even teleport out. What a great game. Let me out of here. Thank you. Come on. Oh, shit. I need these guys to stop chasing me so the door will activate. Next video will probably actually be the new little mini episode from Life is Strange without the kid being a superhero. Because that comes out at the end of the month. Alright, I need to take out these guys like one at a time.
How dare you!
Okay, this is a shit right now. This is just a complete mess. I just need to get through the fucking door. People won't leave me alone. Is there another way I can get across? Yeah, I can go up to the actual residential area and cut across.
Gotcha.
That'll be a lot easier at this point. Oh, I forgot. They keep you from actually leaving when there's enemies around. Always a good sign of gameplay. Okay, this guy is not really that high of a level over me, but I'm doing nothing to him, it seems. You know, I've given this game enough chances. I hate it. I hate this game. I think I've fully come around to embracing that this game is garbage. I mean, I've waited until nearly the end of the game to finally give you my thought that this game is terrible. Don't buy it. In fact, if you're going to buy Don't Nod games, stick to their story games, not anything that has action in it. Can I eat anyone here and level up without turning the district into a complete hole? This is Whitechapel, right? Who's here that's worth eating? I need another level in experience. Who's worth 3,000 experience? Well, Camilla's worth 5,000, but I don't know where she is. The Preacher. Let's go find the Preacher and eat him. He's a terrible guy anyways. We need another level of experience because we're doing nothing to any enemies. I believe he's up here somewhere.
Outright.
It's not my call, Baron. You pay one way or another.
Please, Joe.
Good evening, Mr.
His father.
Do we have anything we can ask him to... Confess your crimes.
Tobias Whitaker. Confess why you burnt those people alive.
I have done what no one was ready to do. I will smite the flesh of the unclean to protect the righteous.
You guys don't mind if I eat this guy, right?
You are just another heartless
Clearly a
murderer,
terrible human being.
exploiting the epidemic to kill with impunity.
No. No. The only way to contain the spread is to strike at the source itself. The proliferating sick.
I mean, he's worth a good chunk of XP.
You're not the savior of London.
You love the Blade
You're just a
trilogy. You should really only
glorified
love the first two.
I take no pleasure in this awful cleansing.
Third one's pretty
Dr.
hard
Reed.
garbage.
I am only driven by the thousands of innocents I save each night.
Why did you send Samuel to the cemetery, Tobias? What did you see there?
I sent him on a vision. A dream of a dreadful and laughing queen covered with blood, sleeping with the dead and feeding on the fear of the dying.
Tell me more.
A laughing queen dressed in blood. Tell me more.
This epidemic is her feast, the announcement of her return. Against her, science is no more than a child's toy.
But who is she?
She is the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. She is Babylon, drunk on the blood of the
He's
saints.
the final boss of the game.
Why did you send Samuel to the cemetery, Tobias? What did you see there?
I sent him on a vision. A dream of a dreadful and laughing queen covered with blood, sleeping with the dead.
I already asked that.
You sent... Good evening, Mr. Whitaker.
It's
How much are
fine.
you now worth? Alright. Your disciple was a grave
Your
robber.
disciple, Samuel, stole from the dead in Stonebridge Cemetery. I have proof of his crime and proof of his death.
No! Samuel was the best of us. so devoted, so zealous. He
So,
gave
what do you
all
guys
he
think
had
Sony
for
and
the
Nintendo are
cause.
going to bring on their
He tirelessly
E3 shows?
preached the good word.
Microsoft said a oh, good, we got the hint available from him too. Now he's at 5,000 XP.
He defiled the dead with his
Sony's
petty
got high
thefts.
expectations built up around them
That's
for their
how
E3
he
conferences.
financed your misguided crusade.
Think what you will. When this city is saved, he will be praised for his devoted fortitude. He walked boldly into the mouth of abomination.
Alright, eating time. Follow me, good father. Yeah, slide on to keep me up to date on the Bethesda conference, if you will. Shouldn't this blood of this guy like kill us since it's holy?
Please forgive me, my lord, for my eyes were blind to the devil in front of me. My task will remain unachieved.
Goody us. Now I need to go sleep. And no, yeah, he will not be missed. He had no social circle, so that was a freebie. Wrong way. And that's a good 5,000 XP boost. We need that. Hopefully this will be enough to get us up another 2 levels. Alright, what do we want? Maybe another level of autophagy? Autophagy? That is expensive though. Already maxed out our health. Could use more endurance because it always sucks when you can no longer attack. But that's only an extra 5% endurance at this point. That's a shit boost actually. Same with that. That does a lot more damage now. No. I think I want the top autophagy. I'm not playing Agony. It's apparently a really garbage game. Now we have... What else do we want? We should level up Blood Spear. No, but still pretty pointless. Go ahead and make our bite better. That way we can heal better in combat. Could you get this game for your dad? No, I'd get him Masquerade Bloodlines. It's a much better game. Really? Why would this place is better off without that dude? We did this place a favor. Apparently this entire district was just really depending on the crazy preacher guy preaching doom and gloom. Did we find the plot? We sort of found a plot. I think we're getting toward the end of the game. I would hope we find the full plot soon, though. What chapter are we on? We're still on We're in chapter 5, and there's one more chapter after this. This will probably end chapter 5, though. We have to go rescue Edgar Swansea. If we have to eat anyone else, it'll be this lady.
When science fails you,
but we don't need it right now.
this elixir will
To be honest, the next people I should eat should be in the rich district, because there's a lot of healthy people up there. And that's in a that district is in a really good shape, so I could eat like 3 or 4 people and it wouldn't really matter. This is Donamite, trust me, I am right there with you. This game is pretty boring. I'm doing my best though. I mean, the game doesn't give me a lot to work with. Alright, now we cut across the west end and we'll be there. Wrong way. This way. Good day, gentlemen.
Fancy clothes? This... I'm to the top.
Oh, it's Neptune Jr., Devil May Cry 5. Damn straight, dude. Probably one of the best trailers of the show so far.
Support the equality between men and women. Women's right to vote is only the first step.
Why do I care about district health? Well, I don't really, to be honest. If I have to, if I get to the end of the game and I'm having trouble, I will eat every single motherfucker in the game. Consequences be damned. I don't know if that if there's like a good or bad ending in this game, and if I have to like keep too many people from dying. I'm just supposing there is. That's why I've been trying to keep them healthy, and not go, you know, hostile. When did everyone start liking Nero, by the way? I always thought everyone hated Nero.
Over there! There's one of them vermin!
Like, didn't everyone really wasn't really into Devil May Cry 4? I remember that being not exactly popular. But now everyone's like, oh shit, it's Nero! Fuck yeah! He's awesome! You really didn't help your friend before he got murdered, did you? This game needs stun locks so freaking badly. He has a 2-bullet revolver and Red Queen when I was excited. So far to me, the From Software game was probably the thing I'm the most interested in. I haven't got to send a From Software game yet, so I'm looking forward to that.
So Priwen never left Doris's theater after they invaded. They must be holding Edgar here in their new headquarters.
What would be the #1 way to improve this game? I actually had some thoughts about this. I would, first of all, I like some of the concepts of the game, but I think it's flawed. If it were my game, and I wanted to make this social vampire game where you had to like do that, I would have first make sure all the NPCs have a schedule, that they're doing stuff throughout the game to make them feel alive, so they're not just standing in one place or meandering about doing nothing. I would do it like something like Majora's Mask style, where every character has a schedule that they keep to, and they'll for the week or something like that. Secondly, I would not just make the characters an experience pool that you can drain. I would actually make I would first also cut the number of NPCs by half, maybe even fewer, so you could focus on making them better and more interesting. And then, rather than have them just be experience sponges that you soak up, I would have your actual abilities tied to individual characters. So if you want this ability, you have to like work your way and kill into this guy's house or something like that. Maybe to get him to trust you first before you can actually sink your teeth into him. And then after you kill him, you absorb his blood and you get this special ability from him. That would be how you level up, not just getting experience that you put into points into like a skill tree. That sounds way more in-depth to me. And for the combat, just make it better. That's really the combat is just janky. That would improve the game immeasurably. Stealth, I would also add an actual decent stealth system into the game, rather than what this game has. This game really needs a stealth system. It really does not have one. It pretends it has one. But it doesn't. Will I send Bayonetta 3? I have to send Bayonetta 2 first. No problem, victim. I've actually been thinking of ways this game could have been better. That's how disappointed I was in it. Thoughts on the conference? I actually detailed all my thoughts on the conference earlier, Neptune.
Doris Fletcher was about to become a disaster.
Basically, I was pretty happy with what Microsoft showed. And I'm also glad they're investing in first-party games now. Again, at the very least. They used to do that pretty well, but then they, for some reason, stopped. And though it'll take a few years before all those new studios actually have anything to show. So don't get your hopes up too soon. I'm also guessing that Hellblade is now an Xbox exclusive and will probably be what Microsoft tries to compete with God of War with. So expect Hellblade 2 to be a much more AAA-like experience. Will I send Halo Infinite? I have no idea. You've watched Game Care Network's Mass Effect Andromeda video and they haven't uploaded the final... Oh, they split it into multiple parts? I don't really like doing that. I like to keep the game to one video. Yeah, I'm not down with, you know, splitting videos into multiple parts if you don't have to. Then again, I believe their videos are typically longer than mine, so however they decided to go about it, I guess. What are my thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077? Is a nice pre-rendered video. Haven't seen any gameplay yet, though.
It's locked, all right.
Need to find a key.
Remember your vows, friends.
This is despicable.
You best stay back, sir.
Okay. I really like how they're reusing this level again. That was nice. Good job, game. So did you miss anything? No, we're just really getting started. There's really not a lot to miss in this game. I think we've all come to that conclusion.
Look at it! Vicious bugger!
Who is talking? Oh, where was that guy standing at? I believe run into a bit of a snag. Oh, goody. Oh, thank God. I was about to rage. I was holding back. You probably noticed my unnerving silence.
Stay close, guys.
I had to stay calm through that one.
I have this thirst for blood.
We could feel the anger twitches. Not gonna lie, I was very close to doing it.
Check every door.
I was just being silent as long as I
It's
possibly
locked.
could. Bethesda kicking off with the Rage 2 showcase.
No civilians
That's
allowed.
expected.
Don't come
Oh, they
any
actually got
fucking
Andrew WK to
closer.
actually perform the song.
Come here!
That's actually surprising.
I cannot enter.
God, this level design is so fucking garbage. Everything's locked. I am beyond compassion anymore at this game. All the little things are just starting to add up, and it's really getting on my nerves. You can only suck for so long.
It's locked.
It's like, just tell me where I'm supposed to go. Where do you want me, game? And I'll go there. Yeah, this game is a big don't buy in my book. Gather information about Edgar Swanse's work, but... What? Did I just fly? What? I hear people talking, but I've explored almost all the doors and nothing leads to anything. I've already been out this way. That's the front door, so I don't want to go back out. Just remind yourself that the ultimate weeb game is coming. I wonder if that's just going to be a straight up fighting game, though. Where, game? Just where? There's only 2 floors. Can I... There can't be much. Oh, Oh, game. Game developers, you're so good.
Stay close. Keep an eye on each other.
Maybe up here? No, okay, that's where I gotta go. They obviously really expected me to remember this layout of this boring place.
Fear no evil. We do the Lord's work here.
One of the bad designs of this game is there's so many doors you encountered, and most of them you can't even open. They just have a little red mark that says this door cannot be opened. But then they also use the same red mark for doors that you can open once you get the key. Oh, that just takes... Fuck! And this door shouldn't even be able to go outside. This just takes me outside where I don't want to go. And now I gotta reload that garbage. I have no waifus. I'm not really into the anime shit that you guys are into.
Return at a more convenient time.
When I think of anime, I think of stuff like Akira. That's what anime is to me. Thank you, 125 bits, Panda. To me, anime isn't waifus and best girls and hug pillows and all this garbage. It's like Tokyo getting nuked and people mutating giant arms and psychic powers. Is there anything at all? Do I think about sending Persona? I think about it, but then I also remind myself that game's like 100 hours long and has a silent main protagonist. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'll hold off. Telling me like 27 meters in that direction, but I've been down there. There's nothing down there. I literally just came from down there.
Have faith, brothers.
That takes me outside, which is not where I want to go. This door cannot be opened. I don't want to go outside. Why is the game just falling apart at the finale? That's when you're supposed to like bring all your bags of tricks. This game is just turned into absolute dog shit for the final areas of the game. Oh, I'm so salty right now. I'm sorry I'm not being entertaining right now. I'm just getting very upset. What? Where did he... I don't even know where that guy came from. Like, I keep hearing people talk, but I have looked everywhere and can't find anyone. I've covered the entire top floor. Let's make sure everything on this floor has been covered, and then we'll go finally search again the bottom floor. Top floor has been covered, every single inch of it. And there's nothing. This is the second floor.
cannot enter.
That door is locked. That's the only locked door I can currently find. Showing the Rage 2 gameplay demo now. Main character is voice. That's good. That means I could probably send it.
It's locked.
Hey, it's locked. There has to be a key I'm missing somewhere that lets me get to that door. Alright, this is the bottom floor.
It smells like rotten meat. One near. I know it.
I'm going to have to do this Resident Evil style where I just press X around the entire environment hoping I find the one pixel the game wants me to click on. I'm the definition of insanity. I'm getting close to insanity, yes. This is the basement.
It's locked.
Another
all
door
right.
that will not open. That's where Swansea is at, but I can't get through the door.
I cannot enter. It's locked.
William Marshall's memories. I don't care.
Blood of a pure heart.
Okay, there was a
Garlic.
key hidden in the paper.
Blood of a king. I don't understand.
Good stuff.
Perhaps this is what McCullum drank. I had better keep that in mind.
Finally! Finally!
Edgar. Edgar, can you hear me?
Jonathan, is it really you?
Easy. Easy. Save your strength. I'm getting you out of here.
Don't try to spare me. As a physician, I know all too well when it's too late.
You seem like you're fine.
Punctured lung, broken ribs, and internal bleeding.
Or, okay, maybe not.
An accurate diagnosis, wouldn't you say?
Edgar, what happened?
They wanted me to confess. Beat me black and blue.
Jeffrey McCullum ambushed me at the Pembroke Hospital. He was convinced you and I were responsible for the Skal epidemic.
I never imagined that self-righteous fanatic would dare to attack us in the open. What became of him?
To prove him wrong, I let him go.
Really? You sure that was the wisest course of action?
Time will tell. The most intriguing part of his accusation was that you and I were the pawns of some ancient
Yeah, Triple, I saw
battle.
the Devil May Cry 5 trailer. Looked pretty sick.
William Marshall. Yes, they tortured me to make me confess the same nonsense.
You were hiding something.
I think you're hiding something, Edgar.
What do you mean?
William Marshall, for example. You speak of him as if you know him. How is that?
Jonathan, I cannot say I'm ready for another round of questions.
Why accuse us of creating an epidemic? What about William Marshall?
What can you tell me about William Marshall?
Not much. History paints the story he was the greatest knight who ever lived. Amongst the immortals, he had a yet greater legend.
Why such a reputation?
Why would he deserve such a reputation?
I cannot say. The Brotherhood of St. Paul's Stole has next to no intelligence on him. All I know is that he's supposed to be the oldest of all the British vampires.
And they're obsessed with him.
Why is
Why?
the Guard of Priwen so obsessed with him?
He was the only ancient vampire to escape the first great hunt launched by the Guard of Priwen in 1854. They believe he's an evil creature plotting his return.
Why would the Guard of Priwen believe you and I created the vampire epidemic?
Maybe.
What do you guys think
due to our
Konami is going to
profession,
show at E3 this year?
Because I offered you shelter in my hospital.
While investigating the epidemic, I read some of McCullum's findings. I think you have some explaining to do.
I have nothing to hide, Jonathan. Nothing at all.
Remember Harriet Jones?
Do you remember when we suspected Sean Hampton of killing Harriet Jones?
Yes. The terrible episode that came as a shock to us all.
Harriet Jones faked her own death. When I found her in the sewers, she confessed she wanted everybody to pay for what happened to her.
That woman was extremely bitter, full of hatred and festering anger.
We can expect to be awkward and weird. It'll probably be. I think really their football game is all they have left, isn't it?
Do you know Doris Fletcher's real name?
No, I'm afraid not.
Her real name was Doris Jones. She was the daughter of Harriet Jones.
What do you want me to say, Jonathan?
Yeah, I don't expect a new Metal Gear Rising.
Doris Fletcher visited her mother at the Pembroke Hospital. That's how she first got infected.
I know nothing about that. Miss Fletcher once came to visit the sick. That is all I know.
No, Edgar, there is more. Doris Fletcher was Harriet Jones's daughter. They exhibited the same symptoms: blind hate and strong physical mutation.
What does this sad story have to do with us?
Do you know where we are?
Do you know where we are? Doris Fletcher's theater. This is where that hateful creature plotted to spread the epidemic across London.
I only briefly met Miss Fletcher once when she visited the Pembroke Hospital. You say it was to see her mother.
This guy's really bad at doing the
Seemed like
interrogations.
such
He
a
refuses to look us in the
sweet
eye.
and graceful woman.
My point exactly. The disease turned her into a bitter soul, driven by vengeance just like her mother. A symptom of all the infected patients.
Certain diseases are known to produce similar effects. Rabies, for example. And rabies is not the devil at work.
Don't you see a pattern of our boredom?
Come on, Edgar. Don't you see the pattern here? The epidemic, the link between Doris and Harriet, the suspicion of McCullum.
How could I? I never saw Harriet Jones again after she fled the hospital.
Doris and Harriet shared more than a hidden family bond. They were the embodiment of the epidemic and are linked to the Pembroke Hospital. Come on, Edgar, this is no coincidence.
I swear I'm at a complete loss. All I did was administer vampire blood to cure old Harriet. There was no evil plan, no diabolical plot.
You did what?
I tested the regenerating and healing properties of vampire blood on Harriet Jones. My only intention was to find the cure for influenza, I swear.
Whose blood did you use? William Marshall's? Mine?
Lady Ashbury's. While transfusing her with human blood, humanely appeasing her
Just-
hunger,
yeah, I'm
I also
fine, I'm
kept
just
samples of her blood
wishing
for
this
my
would hurry up and
Used
end.
her blood on Harriet Jones. My God, Edgar, that's unethical. You betrayed 2 of your patients at the same time.
How dare you judge me? Must I name the alarming list of your victims?
We are both deceivers. But at least I know I'm a monster.
You have worked beside me. You saw what I'm doing at Pembroke Hospital. Jonathan, you know I'm not an evil soul. Just another victim of this tragedy.
Well, he's gonna die regardless, isn't he? We could get another 3,000 XP from this. I don't want to turn him into a vampire. Fuck that. I'm just worried that's going to give me a bad ending. He's apparently a piece of crap, though. No, I'm not turning him, guys. He doesn't deserve to live after all that. He's been such a great guy up until now. Whenever we find someone all on their lonesome, they always turn out to be an asshole. We'll let him die. That's the proper thing to do.
Yes, Edgar, you're about to die. I won't say it's fair, but I can't say you don't deserve it.
Your words hurt deeply, Jonathan. For they come from a friend. I helped you, remember?
Yes, I remember.
The second I saw you in that bar, I knew we would accomplish great things, you and I.
I thought you were a vampire, till you brandished that cross.
I'm not sure if the sin count will be high for this game or not.
You looked so lost when you opened that door. For a few seconds, I thought you were there to kill me.
I think we were both afraid.
And now, I feel true fear. Is there an afterlife? What will become of me when I'm dead, Dr. Reed?
I really cannot say, Dr. Swansea.
He's about to die because he got beat up, several internal injuries.
Life betrays us all.
Well, he's dead. Destroy Harriet Jones, Wait. Prepare to fight disaster. Talk to Lady Ashbury. Destroy Harriet Jones, the source of the Skulls epidemic. Oh, that lady in the sewer? I didn't know she was... That was the source of the epidemic? That one lady? Is this worth picking up? No, not at all. Save your money. If you want a good vampire game, get Masquerade Bloodlines. That's all I can really recommend. And make sure you get it on GOG and then get the fan patches for it too. If I need XP for the later boss, I can just kill people left and right. That won't be a problem. I have this entire district in really good shape, so I can just go in a killing spree and eat everyone.
Later.
Doom Eternal announced. I'll have to check that out. If I finish this game soon enough, guys, we might watch some trailers from Bethesda's. I'll give you my live reaction to some of the Bethesda trailers. Is Witcher 3 Cinnable? Yes, most certainly. Alright, we're heading right down here and taking a right.
Oh! Burn it, boys! Over there! There's one of them vermin! Bloody monster! Bullshit!
That will surely be more interesting than this game. Doom Eternal is a direct sequel to the last Doom. That's good to hear. How do I actually get into her house? Oh, I walked right past it, probably. There's plenty to sin in Witcher 3. It's a long story. Any long story is going to have sins, trust me. I've learned this over sinning countless games. There's plenty of games that were shown off today that I'm interested in, Triple. Most of them, in fact, I'm interested in. Yeah, Sly Dante just told us that Doom 2 got announced. I'm interested. I like the last Doom. Personal diary. Tonight I went with mother visiting the sick of the East End. It had been a long time. Two men tried to corner me. Mm-hmm. I'm so looking forward to this game being done. We have to be very close to the end now.
It's locked, all right.
Will I sin Doom? That would be really hard to sin because, you know, there's very little story in it. It's just you killing demons coolly. In the most badass way possible.
What good fortune brings you back to me, Jonathan? What is it, my dear?
I'm afraid it's bad news, Elizabeth. The worst, actually.
Please, speak up.
Edgar is no longer in McCullum's grasp. I resolved that matter.
Where is our good friend now? Is he well?
He was mortally wounded. I put an end to his misery.
That is terrible, Jonathan. And yet you did what you must. The poor man.
Edgar Swansea was responsible for the Skal epidemic, Elizabeth. It was he who unleashed the deadly scourge upon London.
What? Are you certain? This is the most terrible accusation of all.
He confessed everything to me. He sought to cure the disease, to exploit vampire blood to stop the epidemic. But he unwittingly gave birth to a catastrophe.
All those poor victims.
I don't think vampires need
How could
Botox.
he do it? What happened?
He gave no heed to ethics.
Edgar gave no heed to ethics.
Any honest
His
thoughts on
theory
this
could
game?
have
It's
been proven
garbage.
to be correct, but he
Is that honest
abused
enough?
the confidence of his patients.
Pure
to test
garbage
it.
at this
I
point.
must say I'm shocked, Jonathan. Who would have thought it? And the poor patient. Let me guess.
Everything is all
was
the little
Harriet
things that just
Jones,
piled up
was it
into
not?
one
Yes.
poor game.
That explains how Doris Fletcher was infected, and how she became an Icor. She secretly visited her mother at Pembroke.
Then we have no choice. We must act quickly, Jonathan. We must return to the sewers and put an end to the threat poor Harriet embodies.
I have one more matter to discuss with you. Harriet Jones was the primary case, but do you know what a healthy carrier is?
There is a tone in your voice that frightens me, Jonathan. What are you trying to say?
It was your blood Edgar used for his experiment.
Ooh, the audio
on Harriet
changed.
Jones.
What? No. No. This can't be. Oh, God.
Elizabeth, are you all right?
No, I have to go.
What do you mean?
Leave me alone. Save the city, Jonathan. Save what can be saved.
Elizabeth, I need answers. Why did your blood
Stay
cause
away
this?
from me. Please. I swear I never was your
Wait,
enemy.
no! Elizabeth!
It'll be revealed in the finale. Man, she just fucked up her floor. Wait, what was she painting? Great painting she had going on there. Yeah, it's my red period. I just, paint the entire canvas red. Have we forgotten about the plot line of who our maker is? I get the feeling they're hoping for sequels, and they aren't going to reveal all the details. That's my suspicion.
Now would be a good time
Gather
to
the ingredients for the antidote. Obtain a drop of William Marshall's blood from Lord Redgrave. Obtain a drop of King Arthur's blood from Geoffrey McCullum. Search for insulin at the old morgue of the Pembroke Hospital. Is this really the finale? Just find some shit. Alright. Let's go to the West End and get the blood. We're kind of dead center of that. How do we know that's how you cure it?
Put an end to you!
Please just let me pass.
You leeches been killing! There's one of them burning!
Hey, Letson, how are you, dude? You're playing Halo. Which one? I'm actually surprised anyone plays Halo anymore. Everyone is currently very fatigued. Well, I should really eat that guy wherever he's at. Could really use with 4,000 experience.
Whose blood could be purer than that of William Marshall? Lord Redgrave will have to spare me a drop.
Alright, let's go kill Lord Redgrave. Of course the door would be fucking locked.
Why can't I forgive you, Father?
This game has been one long procession of locked doors, and I am so tired of it. Well, at least I didn't lock their back door. Why even do that? Why just make me go around to the back? So many weird design choices in this game. I'm not sure if they were intentional or they just had too small of a budget to do what they wanted at this point.
I'm still persona non grata in the Ascalon Club. If I want to speak with Lord Redgrave, I'll have to improvise.
How about we just kill everyone? That seems like it would work.
Stupid newborn!
These guys are pretty high level.
This is my territory!
I should be able to handle them one-on-one, though. Okay, you can die anytime. I'd say Watch Dogs is much better than Vampire. I don't really know how many more ways I can say this game sucks, guys. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. And trust me when I mean it. Oh, fuck, I went out the back door. God damn it. Well, more loading. Prey is getting DLC over a year after its launch. Strange. I thought they kind of gave up on that game since it didn't sell very well. This game was, so far, this is the biggest disappointment of the year for me. I had high hopes this game would be good. And it could have been good.
Good evening, Lord Redgrave.
What are you doing here, traitor? I shall smite you for this audacity.
I'm not here to bicker, Lord Redgrave. I can put an end to this epidemic, but I need your assistance to do so.
Good. We've held out thus far, but the time has come to put an end to this crisis. Tell me, what do you need?
The blood of William Marshall.
The blood of William Marshall? Of my maker? Are you mad? This blood is the purest of all. My maker proffered it to me on the battlefield. I cannot hand it to you.
This is the city's last hope. Cease the farce. Cease the farce.
Stop this farce. Marshall never was your maker. I have no idea how you acquired his blood, but I need it now.
I see. Well, in that case, given the gravity of the situation, I suppose I can spare you a drop.
Thank you, my lord.
If you manage to save this city, you'll prove yourself a veritable servant of the crown. So Godspeed,
well, that was easy.
Dr. Reed. Our fate lies wholly in your hands.
I expected a fight. Wolfenstein Youngblood announced. Is that a DLC or an actual sequel?
You again? What do you want?
Plays BJ's okay, that has to be a sequel if you're playing as his twin daughters in 80s Paris.
I can help you no more. We all count on you.
That's
Dr.
surprising.
Reed, for tragedy is imminent.
So basically, I'm guessing BJ did nothing for like 20 years? He just, after he started a revolution? That's kind of bizarre. Yeah, we can go at the front door now, right? Have you seen that? Yeah, I've seen the Xbox E3 announcements, guys. Pretty good stuff. Before we leave this town, let's eat someone. I need more experience. Who would be good? Man, our butler is worth a lot. This guy is worth a pretty good chunk. I think I know where he is, too. Let me cure you of your fatigue. Well, no, shit. It takes an well, I can cure him of his fatigue, and
good evening.
Then he'll be worth more.
Have you any?
I heard.
All right.
Do you need medical help?
You would save my life, Dr. Reed. I have not felt so bad in many years.
Give him the medicine.
Don't worry.
I cannot imagine the pain these people must face.
Alright, do you have anything worth buying?
Have a look at your goods, Mr.
Lead plate. I wish this would tell me how many of these I already have. All of his stuff is so expensive, though. Well, we'll get all of it once we kill him, though, won't we? Just in case. Let me go sleep, and then we shall kill that dude.
Have you noticed anything suspicious recently?
We could also eat our butler, because he's worth even more, but I'll save that in case, you know, that gives us like a bad ending or something. Which upcoming game am I hyped for? There's plenty it's worth getting interested in, trust me. There's not just one at this point. Basically, almost everything that was shown today I'm really interested in. Alright, what do we want? I think I'll just hold on to this 1,000 experience and use it. Shit, I need to actually sleep, though. This game has worn me down. Yes, it is. I'm just rushing to the end now. Oh shit, oh fuck. The entire hospital, because of that guy dying, all those people are now gone. So I can't eat any of them. And there's damn it, I was counting on being able to eat them. Fuck. That sucks. Oh well. Should have harvested them while I could. Well, I tried. If I eat everyone, the districts also fall apart, guys, so I have to be careful who I eat. This district, though, is still healthy, so I shouldn't have too much problem, you know, chowing down here. He's worth 3,000 experience. That's pretty good. Follow me, Doctor.
Good evening.
Had to run an errand. Did I miss anything? We got some special magical blood to make an antidote with. Now we have to go get some more magical blood. But we're leveling up first, because we're near the end of the game. Oh, she didn't notice that.
Death may be the most disappointing dish I have ever tasted. So insipid. So cold.
Well, he took it pretty well. We also need to loot his shop. We got a small key from that. 350 shillings and a lead plate. I'm happy with that. Nothing personal, I just want to beat the game. Can I upgrade my weapons any further? No. Wrong weapon. Yes, I can. I can upgrade 10% more damage on that. That. And what about my shoddy? Well, that's already fully upgraded, isn't it? Take. Okay, pretty good. We're in really good shape now. Okay, I like that. What's my favorite pizza place? There is really no standout pizza place where I live, so it's all kind of mediocre. I wouldn't really call any of my favorite. If pizza's good, I don't really care where it comes from. I'm not picky. Oh shit, I still need to sleep, don't I? Almost forgot. Bethesda made a skit about re-releasing Skyrim a lot. Oh, they're in on the meme, are they? How wonderful of them. Okay. I think I want my claws upgraded some more. I want more damage right now. That's $4,500. Everything is so expensive at this point. Sure, we'll make our ultimate a bit stronger. Alright, we're at level 31 now. Eat tall trees? I have to be careful. If I eat anyone else from this district, everyone dies. So if I eat anyone here, I have to eat them all at once. Because next person causes this district to go to hell. What do I give this game? Bad reviews, bad marks, failure of a game, disappointment. Right now, we're gonna go get some more blood. We have to go to the hospital. Obtain a drop of King Arthur's blood from Geoffrey McCullum. Or no, that's the morgue. We're gonna go search for insulin at the old morgue. That's what we're doing next. Going the wrong way, though.
Support the equality between men and women.
Can I cure you guys of your freaking medical problems? No, you're...
You need some rest, Clarence. You should...
I don't want you guys, like, getting too sick and causing the district to fall apart while I'm gone. I might need to come back here and feed again. In one big orgy of blood.
And good.
Do you need my...
Give her the medicine.
My mother wants to...
Goodbye, Charlotte. Give my best regards to your mother when you see her.
Well, it's basically what it'd be. If this district is going to go to hell, I just have to eat everyone before they all, get taken out. Does the ending depend on who you eat in these of the NPCs? Does that matter at all? Or I'm guessing there has to be multiple endings in this game.
I'll kill you!
You this way. That'll take us right across the bridge.
Over there! There's one of them vermin!
If I need to, I'll go back there and eat everyone in one go. Trust me. That will be no problem. Depends on the areas, so if too many areas are hostile, then you get a bad ending. That makes a bit more sense, so I don't really want to do that then. That would turn that area hostile.
Elite! Want some of that?
Okay, this place is in bad shape now.
I cannot use garlic, but there may be a substitute in the Pembroke Hospital drug storage.
Okay. They're just reusing all their levels at this point, aren't they? We're going back to the morgue. We ran out of levels to put the player in, so just have him go back to the first level in the game. Well, we're back here again.
Step away, sir. Hey, vermin!
Prepare my anus? Oh, it is prepared. Come on. Humans are more durable than vampires in this game. He's wearing a really thick coat. Do I want to know what I want to play after this? I'm probably gonna play that what's the game? There's actually another Don't Nod game that actually comes out in just another 2 weeks, so I'm probably gonna play that. Fallout 76 is an MMO. Boo! Everyone boo.
Sorry, sir. No admittance.
God, I hate this combat so much. Speaking of what feels like an MMO at the times, this game and its combat. I don't really have a favorite video game character. And survival being used. Is an MMO survival game? Strange. Well, that's a game I'm gonna be playing, regardless. Such a disappointment. Did anyone actually boo during the conference for that game at this point? I kind of hope there was.
Mr. Connor's injuries don't match the report. I'd better look into this.
What am I...
Traces of a pinkish foam at the corner of the lips. Some sort of drug overdose, perhaps? Multiple abrasions and scarring on the arms and legs. Old and distinctive.
I played Ape
injuries
Escape.
of a
Yeah,
sailor
Ape Escape was a
or
great
fisherman.
game.
The chest was originally opened to perform the operation. The sutures are clean, but the chest has been reopened. A puncture over the left lung, possibly a chest tube
I didn't get this
insertion.
side quest. This is apparently something you
Not
could have
the
done very
cleanest
early in the
work,
game.
but I think it was successful. Signs of internal bleeding. So, Dr. Tippett's anesthetics were incorrectly dosed, causing the patient's death. And then he tried to operate on him again.
Tippett has made an egregious error. It's time we talked.
He's dead. Don't think it matters anymore. Is there a clue anywhere in this freaking morgue where the insulin is at?
Watch out, boys!
Holy God, big dude, lay off. I hate this game so much and it's freaking garbage crump. I hate it. I've grown to hate it so much. It infuriates me beyond belief. Every facet of this game's combat system is terrible. How do you make a combat system this bad in this day and age? They should feel ashamed of this game. Oh, he can shoot me right through walls, can he? Nice to know that. Just give me the freaking insulin. That's all I want. Where do I find the freaking insulin in this place? I have no video game waifus. I don't really like waifus. I don't like anime. I don't like anything. This game has made me know nothing but hate. All love is gone from my life until I'm done with this game forever. look at how they're just wasting my fucking time now. Just find all this shit. We won't tell you where it is, though. They're adding hours onto the freaking playtime for no reason other than busy work. They're even making me go back to the morgue where I've already been. I checked out the entire bottom floor. There was no freaking morphine down here. This game is a vampire, exactly. And the morphine is upstairs? Oh no, this... I'm so... Thankfully those guys are respawning. Yay. Oh yeah, I forgot. Stamina. I need to drain this guy. Just in game. Just accept that needle in your fucking vein. I have not been this down on a game since I played Resident Evil 5.
There it is.
Finally.
Insulin.
All that for insulin.
Much more efficient than garlic.
You know what? I
against
hate
blood
diabetics
poisoning
now.
sepsis.
Sorry, Let's Sin.
And much
Diabetics
less
suck.
dangerous for me. Thank you, Dr. Polescu.
Basically everything this game touches now, I dislike. No, Final Fantasy XIII is worse because it's so long and bad. You have to not kill anyone to get the best ending? I don't care. I'll find it on YouTube if I really want to see it. This game would be a nightmare trying to get through without killing anyone. Now we gotta go up to the West End to get the drop of King Arthur's Blood. We're just mixing all this shit together thinking it's gonna work. Which way? Straight across the bridge.
You leeches and get mine! I'll take it!
What it really sucks is it doesn't seem like it matters. The enemies always are always like 5 levels ahead of you.
There! There's one of them vermin!
Oh yeah, that's right. You can't open gates when you're being chased. Well, I kill everyone in the game. Well, I want to avoid it at this point. Don't Nod really needs to stick to narrative focused games. They do not know how to make action games. This is their second colossal failure. Just pack it in. They obviously do not know how to make this work.
If McCullum really drank the blood of King Arthur, then I may have found another vital ingredient for my recipe.
Good thing we didn't turn him into a vampire then. Okay, he's somewhere here. He's just up here in the graveyard for no reason.
Good evening, vampire hunter.
Are you here to end me, Leech? You'll find I will not be killed easily.
Not at all, McCullum. I am here.
Yeah, I'll
because
send
I
Final
need
Fantasy VII Remake, no
Really?
doubt.
I'm intrigued. Speak up, then.
I need the blood of a king. The blood of Arthur. I'm certain you possess it, and I must have it.
The guard's most sacred and precious relic. Why would you? You found Marshall's memoirs. I should have destroyed that book.
I need the antidote to save this city.
Fallout comes out
It is
November
within me
14th.
to take your words as
We're
true.
beyond caring for that game now.
I want to, but I must know more. What precisely are your plans?
I must stop a disaster. I can stop the epidemic.
I have found the carrier, McCullum. The infection's source. It may be science or some supernatural power that's responsible for all this. But I will harness either or both to end the epidemic.
A vampire doctor. My God, you're a terrifying creature. Jonathan Emmett Reed.
Do you not understand? We wanted the same thing from the outset. A means to end this vampire epidemic.
Not enemies.
No, this game is not like Dark Souls.
Maybe that is so. Take it then. I see no other hope for this city. If this is some trick, you will be damned, Dr. Reed.
Thank you.
Alright, we have King Arthur's blood.
Can we speak more?
Indeed. Why not?
One of your clients got hit with crypto? You mean like the virus that locks your computer, the ransomware virus?
Why are you here?
The man who raised me after the brutal murder of my parents. He's buried here.
Were both your parents killed by vampires?
Yes. And yet worse. My father returned to Dublin a vampire and tore out my mother's throat.
And who was this man?
Carl Eldritch. One-time leader of Prewin. He killed my father in front of me. Helped me hunt my brother Ain after teaching me how to kill leeches.
What will the Guard of Prewin do now? Will you stop the Great Hunt?
Yes. But we shall continue to protect innocents from beasts like you and your red-headed friend.
Where is she?
How long have you known Lady Ashbury? Where is she? And what will you do to her?
We saw you meeting her, so of course we investigated. But she is gone. Our scouts reported she has sold some paintings and departed for an unknown destination.
Like me?
I am indebted to you for sparing me at Pembroke. But this won't always be the case. I'm no coward like those St. Paul's Stowe brothers.
Alright, we're done talking.
Adieu.
Let's go make our... whatever we have to make it in the
Until
game.
we meet again, blood drinker.
Find a hideout to create the antidote. Okay, there's one not far from here. We'll go back to the... this one, I suppose. However it is we get there, though, I'm not entirely sure. Seems like there's like a little area here that I should be able to go to, but I can't.
Put an end to you!
Nope, I'm not interested in fighting. I'm gonna have to kill you though, aren't I? Alright, here we go. We can make our antidote here. I think. William Marshall's memoirs. What? Serum created by following the Tear of Angels recipe that with insulin instead of garlic to enhance protection against disastrous infection. There we go. We created it. The cure with King Arthur's blood, William Marshall's blood, and insulin. What a strange mixture.
The blend seems
Wonder bits
stable.
from Godiato.
Time to go and find Harriet in the sewers.
Alright, guys. This should be it. Back to the sewers. So much fun objectives. It's all the way over there. Oh, wait, what? Destroy the origin of the skulls of reach the high. I guess those are both entrances to the same place. Okay, we now have to go all the way across the map. Of course we would. Start a new recording though. Father Gascan, thank you for your Twitch Prime subscription, dude. Make sure you use those emotes you just bought, and feel free to tell us about yourself in chat. That's a new monster. I have not seen that before. Weird. Like a super skag. Gotta go all the way over to one of these. We'll go to the one in the west end.
It's one of them!
Your name is Dan, you're 21 years old, and you flunked out of college. Well, you got two things going for you, I guess. Still young, and your name's Dan. You can go far with that. No, I'm not gonna make the video 1 second long. I'm not that late. I'm not that. I kind of have to not be lazy. Sadly. Why am I suddenly finding it so hard to get around this place? Okay, there we go. I hate this map so much. It's so hard to find your way around.
Watch yourselves! This one!
Okay, we can go up. Alright, we can just go across this bridge and straight to it.
I'll take it.
I think this will work. It should work. Seems like it'll work.
The power of the Lord commands you. It's one of them.
Okay, straight across.
Stop! Vampire! It's an eat! Kill it! Die, vermin!
Alright, we're back in the west end. We need to save in our safe house so we get all of our health back, and then we'll go to the final area. If I had to fight all those people normally, that would be a huge waste of time. Better to go just teleport past them. They don't give you any enough experience to make it worthwhile.
Women's right to vote is only the first step.
Alright, to bed, and then the final fight of the game. I don't have enough experience to level anything up. This place is on the edge. Actually, it's probably quicker if I go out my back door. Or is it? Okay, whatever. Whichever way works. A suffragette in the middle of the night. Well, everyone goes out in the middle of the night in this game, no matter the reason. Mainly because I didn't think it through very well. I just love the fact that the final level is a sewer level as well. That's always a great sign. Did you miss anything important? We're going to the final fight of the game. And then we'll be free. It would be funny if the final boss was just a really long conversation. Can you defeat the hour-long conversation? Wait, they just announced a new Elder Scrolls game? Elder Scrolls 6. Where's it set? Which region? Wait a second. This is important. Where's the new Elder Scrolls set? 42 bits from Freddy, thank you. Hold on. Important news afoot. No one was really expecting a new Elder Scrolls already. They only announced it, they didn't say where it's set. They didn't show footage. Oh, they didn't. They just said there. Well, that's not really much news in, because we kind of already figured they'd be working on it. That's not really a big deal then. I would have already placed money on that bet. We'll find out more about that next year. I'm hoping they set it in Elsewhere, just because it would be a really stupid sounding game. And plus, who doesn't like the Khajiit? You have coin? You have coin. You have coin? Khajiit have wares. There we go. I was trying to think of the second part of that line. High Rock? Didn't they already have a game set in High Rock? Like the Daggerfall was technically High Rock? Elder Scrolls 6. How many platforms can we put this on all at once?
It's locked, all right.
What am I most hyped for? I'll wait till everything's been announced before I get hype about anything. No point at this point in time, but there's some really good looking stuff so far. I remember this place. That's where I fought that big dude. This finale blows. They just reused all the same locations that you've already been to. I think this is the right way. Yeah, this is the hive. Okay.
This place has been ransacked.
Alright, this should be a big boss fight time. Everyone is apparently dead.
They've all been slaughtered. Priwen. No, not their style.
Probably Harriet herself slaughtered them. Favorite video game of all time, either Deus Ex or Final Fantasy IX.
Where has Harriet gone?
Is the final boss of this game really gonna be like old lady? Is that good? Is that it? That's all they can think of? Just, here's an old lady. You met her once. She's the final boss. Oh good, we gotta locate someone again. That's always fun. Well, I got plenty of stuff, don't I? 25 bits. Is the story seriously making you room? Yeah, she's apparently our love interest. It is what it'd be. Okay, where would Harriet be at this point? Not exactly a big place. Through here? No. Somewhere in here. This is dumb. I looked, there's only like 3 big blood splots over there that I saw. There's like 1 big one there. I didn't see any down this way, so I don't believe she went here. Oh, she went out this way, apparently. Demolish a video game developer? I wouldn't do that to anyone. Just because someone makes a bad game doesn't mean I want people to lose their jobs.
Where is old Bridget? Damn. If I'd come earlier, they would still be alive.
Nothing of value was lost. Keep going. This looks like a proper setting for a boss fight.
Take not a step further, child, for you are unprepared.
You at last. I wondered when you would show your face again. Step away. We have nothing to discuss.
Desist, child. You cannot confront the monstrosity unleashed upon this land without due preparation. I shall not allow it.
All right. But no more riddles. Enough of the obscure songs and prophecies. I ask questions, and you answer them.
My words have been as clear as crystal lakes, my child.
Really?
You seem unwilling to drink, to listen, to learn.
Why did you choose me?
Why did you choose me?
Only you could provide a modern, scientific answer to this ancient, mystical threat.
Ancient threat?
Speak to me of this ancient threat.
The blood of hate. Vessel of the wrath of the goddess. When she awakens, a disaster will be born into this world, for she is hunger and anger.
What kind of modern answer?
Disease, contagion, and contamination. How they course through veins is your dominion, my child. Your choices have made you. Only you can save this land.
And who would you be?
What is your true appearance?
I do not understand. This is who I am.
You are made of blood? What a dumb... Are you made of blood?
Blood? You are made of blood? Surely you are joking.
Why would I? And no, I'm not made of blood. I am blood. Blood is what I am since my birth and for eternity.
Who are you really?
But who are you really? Tell me your name.
I am your maker. I am the servant of the Red Goddess and protector of this land. I have many names.
Just give me one, then.
There are those who call me Myrddin Wylde, the Wild Horned Man. But I never was a man. I was born out of blood.
Morgan White? Is that what he said? Is this some historical figure that I'm not aware of?
I'm here to stop Harriet Jones. She is the original carrier. The well from which this corruption flows.
I have heard you, but be wary. Harriet Jones's mind is no more. She has metamorphosed into an apocalypse. Born from, drenched in, and driven by the blood of hate.
What is the blood of hate?
What is the blood of hate?
It is the curse of the goddess. It is the hunger in you, the need for blood, the will to strike and to punish, to spit in the eye of God.
Tell me about this disaster, creature. I know London fell victim to such a thing in 1666.
A disaster is pure anger born through blood. Its name means bad star, for they only appear when our queen unleashes her unquenchable wrath upon the world.
Who is the queen?
And who is this queen?
She is the Red Goddess, the queen of blood. In my youth,
She is the vague
100
princess
lifetimes
of
ago, she was
non-meaning and
worshipped
non-existences.
as the Moira. She is my mother. She is yours, too.
We're just flying
The
by the
Moira,
seat of our pants on this.
the Celtic
That's
goddess
who
of
the queen
war.
is.
Is this a ruse of some kind?
She has been worshipped in many forms throughout the ages. The true nature of the Red Queen is beyond your comprehension, eluding even mine. But know this, she is a vengeful mother.
I would prefer to worship Sithis. Come on, dude.
So the
You
disaster
got nothing.
is some sort of accident. A disease vampires carry dormant in their blood. waiting to emerge.
That's your modern answer. But a disaster is at the same time both less and more.
Tell me what it is then, in your own words.
I hope this game doesn't get a sequel. I really don't.
It's the pure will of our queen. Whenever she dreams of walking this earth, she awakes in this putrid vessel.
I only wish to know how to put an end to this epidemic.
To perform an act so noble, you must protect yourself from its poisonous kiss, my child.
I know. McCullum used such a serum when trying to kill me. However, I have produced a more efficacious version.
Because a sequel I sent, I guess I'd have to, wouldn't I?
Your final task awaits you at the end of these tunnels. I've known for ages you were worthy of this challenge, my champion, Bittersweet.
What will happen then?
What will happen thereafter? What future awaits me beyond these dark tunnels?
Your fate, my child, and the fate of this land. A disaster is about to enter this world to smite us all and teach us humility. You are our final hope.
Do you think it's okay to be a jerk with a heart of gold? Is such a thing possible, to be a jerk with a heart of gold? How do you reconcile that?
Will it be over?
Yes, please.
Once I've defeated this creature.
Yes. The threat will
The question we're all dying to know.
So much smoke, for you will have purified it.
Maybe they'll get it right in the sequel. Who knows?
And then
it could
what?
turn out well.
What will become of me?
How would I know? I am no god, and your fate is in your own hands. For you are our champion.
You tricked me. My sister died for your schemes. I have brought suffering and tragedy into this world. I am not, nor will I ever be your champion.
Very soon you'll come to know that sacrifice is sometimes necessary. I understand the grudge a child bears towards his father and mother. Be brave, my child.
So long, Blood Daddy. This is the most boring video game about vampires I've played since Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. Okay, she went that way. What's over here? That's a way we can get back to the surface quickly if we need to do some leveling, isn't it? That's a lot of candles alight. Oh yeah, it's the Resident Evil lady. She's infected with G-Virus. This is our final boss, by the way.
Sick.
Just a sick,
So
mutated
sick.
old woman.
Doctor, help me, please. I'm in such pain.
I'll be glad to be of assistance.
Ah, like your help, Doris. Liars, all of you. My poor baby. I've been such a bad mother. But the Queen herself forgave me. Gave me another chance.
Harriet, you must stop all of this. I can't let you infect anyone else.
How dare you interfere with the Red Queen's plans, Doctor? How can you stop the course of nature?
That's the worst vomit sound I've ever. I
was a good mother.
Oh, that's not an angle I wanted to see. Okay, time for stage 2, right? Are we playing Agony? You know, this boss fight would be nice if it had some music. This is bizarre. Is there supposed to be music playing? There has to be a glitch, right?
Give me more. They are so young, so tasty.
Oh. Yeah, nice animation. I gotcha. There has to be music I was supposed to play over this, right? Okay, she can't be stunned either, I'm noticing. So, I should just go ahead and switch to my shoddy, which does way more damage. The glitch, yeah, that sounds about right. Please don't kill me. Ultimate on her.
Give me more. They are so young, so tasty.
What a weird fight. She is speaking. There's just no music playing because of a glitch. I need my stamina to come back real soon. Okay, she got scythes now.
Blood, feed me, give me their lives.
Ow, 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 ow. Let's wait for my ultimate and finish her off. Wow, that sucked.
No one could ever defeat you, mother of us all, for you are our every root and limb.
That was god-awful.
You've always been
Not that I'm complaining that it was easy, but...
Then go back to sleep, my queen, and smile at us from your dreams.
Did they feel my wrath? Have they suffered enough?
More than ever, mother of us all.
Until the next time.
Until the next time.
Wow. Sucked. Even he looks like disappointed,
So
like,
it's over then,
what the fuck?
young Ekon. You have put an end to this terrible menace.
Old Bridget, what are you doing here?
This is my realm, Ekon. This is Suaskal territory.
But they were all massacred by the monstrosity that Harriet became.
The antidote was just like,
Others
it didn't
will
really do
come,
anything, it's just like, that kept us
engendered by
clean or
deceitful
something, I don't know.
vampires. I don't mean you, of course.
I thought you'd been slaughtered, with all the other sewer scars.
I was up above, in search of help when Harriet suddenly turned into that thing. I have no idea what it was.
It's all over now. The epidemic has been stopped.
Yes, you prevailed in the end. I hope you'll forgive me for the way I treated you when first you presented yourself at our gate.
No need to apologize, really.
Perhaps there will be no stories told or songs sung of what happened here today. But I'll know the truth. Jonathan Reed, newborn vampire, stepped forward and saved us all.
I'm honored to be part of this city's legend. Thank you, old Bridget. May I ask you just one question?
How could I refuse you anything now? I'll answer just as I answered Lady Ashbury when we met a few nights ago.
Who are you? Really?
I was born with the name Bridget Eleanor Wellington. In 1738, my beloved and immortal husband decided to preserve my beauty and youth forever by making me drink his blood.
You were Lord Redgrave's wife. Then the pompous fool rejected you, did he not?
It was about 200 years ago. Peace found me in time. And I sincerely hope it will find you too, now that all is over.
What happened to our girlfriend?
No,
Ashbury.
It's not over. I may have ended the vampire epidemic, but I still need answers from the woman I love.
I feared you would say that. Go then, young Ekon, and face your fate. Just remember that I'll always be here for you.
It's not over. Come on. Please just be a cutscene that goes right to it. Don't make me walk to it.
London has been cleansed. This
This is promising.
catastrophe came about when an ancient malignant will crossed paths with mortal imprudence. For now, we are safe. For now. My craving for blood remains. Red like hate, red like hunger, red as life and death, passing from one immortal to another, from predator to victim, patiently biding its time to rise again. London has been cleansed for now, but there's a simmering hatred, fear, and old grudges. When will we succumb, mortals and immortals alike? The next disaster is only a matter of time. My only hope now is to catch the woman I love, to understand why she fled, and unmask the secret that has been lurking in her blood for so long.
She's Dracula's daughter. Who cares? Wait, how did we follow it? How did we know she came here? Wow, that is a baller car, dude. Oh god, it's another level? Please be short.
Well, this is it. Lady Ashbury's domain. Why am I not surprised it's not on any maps?
Then how did you find it? Find why Elizabeth's blood creates disasters. Meh. Okay, there's a 7th chapter. Someone lied. This is supposed to be 6 chapters long. Oh, it's Blood Daddy again.
Beautiful morn, my child. It looks like dawn is here at long last.
Can't you just leave me alone? Your precious queen has been sent back to the bottomless pit from whence she came. The nightmare is almost over.
I am here to say goodbye. The sun's warmth
Yes, the
exhausts
nightmare is almost over.
Soon I will rejoin my queen in her endless sleep. It is over. You did well.
About the disaster.
Why did Harriet Jones become a disaster?
Don't worry, Sly Dante, you missed nothing interesting.
You hold the knowledge needed to answer such a question. Have you the answer?
That was possibly the worst final boss fight I have ever had in a game.
I noticed that all the Icors were female, as if a male couldn't endure the metamorphosis. Harriet was also a bitter and resentful woman, as was her daughter.
If the Morrigan prefers despoiled women to become the vessels of her wrath, we should be thankful that but one disaster hath been cast upon this wobbling world.
Icors are contagious.
Icors seem to carry various diseases. They did not merely turn people into skulls. Their presence alone spreads death.
Who knows whether the Red Queen awakens when cursed mortals endure such epidemics, or if the contagions emerge like a curse as she awakes.
Even the game didn't like that final boss fight, so it refused to play. I'm sure what was some great, violin music.
So our beloved mother will just go back to sleep, now that enough people have suffered. Is that it?
No, Jonathan. The Morrigan has been appeased because you dared confront her. You have prevailed, my
Detroit Become Human nearly split us apart, but Vampire brought us back together. You're actually right on the money with that.
And what are you to her? Her counterpart? Her opponent in some timeless
Remember
game?
how good Detroit was and how fun to stream that game it was? How much fun we had streaming that?
Mother. She is yours too, in a way.
I think we don't appreciate David Cage enough.
Terrible womb like me. You are but a distant child.
What does she seek? Revenge? Retribution?
She seeks nothing, since she only dreams of it. In the ancient tongue, when I was young, her name meant Ghostly Queen. Pray she never fully awakens, for her wrath knows no bounds.
This is not over.
This is not over. I am here to find the true origin of the blood of hate.
'Tis unwise to interfere with a tale rooted so deeply in the suffering of others.
Oh, why is there so much more talking? It never ends. Ugh.
What will happen to Ascalon? Will you let them run the country?
Just
from the
let
shadows?
go of your precious words, please.
Political intrigues. Ascalon was built upon the lie of a lineage.
Don't make a sequel with the game. Make a book.
But Lord Redgrave definitely possessed Marshall's blood. Untainted blood from the greatest vampire knight.
Really? I wonder how he managed.
This game would be like 10 hours long without all the talking. If even that.
Artifact before going back to sleep.
What will become of the vampire hunters?
They will never stop
I
searching.
can't just
for
end the
William
game,
Marshall,
Neptune. I have to see
for
what the
he
big
escaped
mystery
their two
is.
great hunts.
I'm sure it'll be shocking.
Remember that you too are now on their dark list.
I want these characters to start speaking like they're at an auction. So it's like, just get it over with quickly.
What will become of the Brotherhood?
The Brotherhood is as wise as it is ancient. You have nothing to fear from it.
I am not afraid.
Do you
I want all of you to
truly think
spam
they are
Resident
merely
Sleeper
scholars
remote in chat
poring
right
over
now.
Dusty books? The stole of St. Paul wielded faith sufficient to cast a dragon into the abyss.
That is just a legend.
Am I not a legend? Are you not about to become one yourself?
There, that's what I want to see.
No. I must know why Elizabeth fled here when I discovered she was the original healthy carrier.
No, she is not what you say she is. That is a secret you will discover soon enough.
And you? Why are you here? Which new thread of which old twisted plan are you seeking to pull now? Tell me the truth.
I am just here to salute my sons. and to bid them fare thee well.
Your sons? Plural? My God, will you ever stop speaking in riddles?
Please.
Perhaps I am too old for your spoken language. Perhaps you now have so many subtle words you no longer hear the simplest ones.
Oh, this is breaking me. It keeps going. Oh. Who are your sons?
Who are your sons? Why do you bid them farewell now?
You are my son.
This is what it's like to play video games in Guantanamo.
This is madness. How many have you created? Who else? Shakespeare? Isaac Newton?
What?
Alfred the Great?
Huh?
Francis Drake? Thomas More? Guy Fawkes?
My progeny
Huh?
is scarce,
What?
for I rarely feel the urge to protect this land anymore. But yes, one of those you named is your immortal brother. Maybe you should meet one night.
Okay. He made Guy Fawkes, totally, yeah. I'm a survivor. Are we just puppets to you?
So that is all we are to you. Puppets you create.
This game has
to
made me
defeat
hate
some
vampires.
threat born from a dreaming devil.
No. You are my sons. I am proud of you. I mourn when you fail.
Serum made of King Arthur's
When
blood?
he fought me, Geoffrey McCullum used a serum made of King Arthur's blood. Since then, I have discovered that it was vampire blood. Whose blood was it?
Twilight is better than this game.
It was the blood of a king. The blood of the champion I chose to save this land in its time of greatest peril.
King Arthur was also your progeny. Why am I not surprised?
Yes, he was. But he failed in the end. And for centuries the land suffered his defeat.
Oh.
Tell me about William
If
Marshall.
there is another set of dialogue
Why
options
is
that
his
pop
blood
up after
so
I click on that
strong?
yellow text, I'm gonna scream.
Than you, only older. You are strong, Jonathan Reed. A champion of your time, chosen to defeat a threat spawned of this generation.
Is he here? Is William Marshall here?
This torture.
Is that why you're here now?
Pure torture!
Have I not already answered that question?
I feel like I'm in Clockwork Orange and my eyes are just being held open and being dropped into it to keep them open.
His blood was not tainted. The blood Lord Redgrave possessed. That which I used in the serum. But what if it had been?
Then you would have failed, I suppose. For the blood of hate would have corrupted you too.
Speak clearly and succinctly, however that word is pronounced. Keep it short. Brevity is your friend.
Speak clearly then. And answer my last question.
What is it?
Did I defeat the epidemic?
Now you've found the castle, Jonathan Reed. Only you can answer that. Farewell, my child. I shall dream about you soon.
You were one of the top 10 worst characters I've ever encountered in a video game. Begone, exposition.
I cannot enter. The castle walls are decrepit.
Yeah!
Maybe I can find a way to sneak in.
Another locked door. This physically hurts. Why?
It's locked.
Just go around it then. I'm convinced the developers who made this game hate people. I even backed away from my microphone about a good 3 feet to yell, and it apparently was still too loud. My apologies. Yeah, why shouldn't I be dying? It's daytime. Or is it? I guess I'm in the shade, so it's okay. Find a way into the castle. Oh. Oh yeah, because they were too lazy to actually, you know, give a proper barrier. This is the worst finale ever created. Mary Inglewood. Robin Inglewood. 25 locked doors are kryptonite. Just talking plus locked doors plus investigation missions where you just wander around the environment. It's all just garbage. I'm in hate with this game. Can you be in hate? It just... This was a very slow, for you, those of you who tuned in for my very first stream of this game until now, you've noticed my hate of this game has just been slowly built over time. This isn't just sudden, all of a sudden happening. It just, all the little things have added up over time into one gigantic pile of rage. There's been just no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Isn't expecting visitors.
There's been nothing to make this experience fun. That's the problem. You can explain. You can have some bad stuff in your game if you have good stuff to counteract it. This game is on the same level as Resident Evil 5 as well. The game should have been over by now. It should have definitely been over.
It's locked, all right.
Of course it is. Oh, yeah, why would I expect that would opening, you know, lead to something important? Don't even buy this game if you see it on sale. Shun this thing. Yes, if you bought this game and you still have your return option, do it. Do not play it over 2 hours and lose your chance to return this piece of garbage.
Maybe it's just my imagination, but I think I smell Elizabeth's perfume. She must be here somewhere.
We're gonna have another long conversation when we meet Elizabeth as well.
Like most castles, this one has a crypt. And it holds something special
Down into the crypt.
Elizabeth, my love. You allow my portrait to watch. This castle is falling apart.
But she painted us.
Elizabeth, my love. You allow my portrait to watch over you while you sleep. I'm flattered.
Did you say what to that? Oh. I'm almost out of things to say.
Sweet fragrance. Elizabeth's perfume.
What more can I actually say?
And recently.
Thoroughly bad game from beginning to end. Who knew being a vampire, a socialite vampire, could blow this hard? Someone tell that flute player to shut the hell up. How much longer? Please, how much longer? I think it's down there that I need to go, but let's... Just to be thorough, because that's my job.
This painting looks suspicious.
Forever. This game costs a lot of money to make, by the way. I'm surprised this game got even moderately good reviews. Oh, that's me fighting the Red Queen. Got it. To quote Tom Servo, and this is exhausting. Oh, why would I expect that leads to something interesting? It's only that... I need therapy. I honestly think I need therapy from this game. Okay, I've already been through here. What? What? That's the way I just came. Why does everything loop back on itself? Why is this even necessary? Yeah, this just loops back to the very beginning. What?
A sword and a moon are the symbols I should look for.
Oh god. Sword and moon? What? My conscious thought is starting to shut down. What is this, a finale puzzle? What? This is so against everything about modern game design. Oh. I'm gonna have to like do like serious deep breathing courses. So wrong. That's got me looking around for a secret. Okay, it has the secret passage. It had to be that one I couldn't open before, right? Has to be. You have to be immortal to be able to sit through this game, I think.
What are these symbols? I can feel a mechanism, but it doesn't work. Here's another switch. I should keep looking.
Okay, I need a sword and moon, right? That's a shield, and this one's a plant. I'm dead inside. I didn't think it was possible, but a game has broken me at this point. I'm the guy who sent all 3 Final Fantasy 13 games, you know? That's my accomplishment. Why couldn't they just give me the credits? Why did this have to be put into the game? We could have met her in the city. It's dumb. Phenomenally dumb. This is the end of the game. You don't need a puzzle at the end. Upstairs. I gotta check upstairs, right? There's another one. This is a half moon.
One last switch, and...
God, just... 4 switch. There's another switch somewhere. We got that one. Are they all in this room? There is no humor to be found, I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to take humor in me just in my pure agony at this point. Oh. I'm guessing they're all here in this room? No, I've checked all 4 corners. Oh, there it is. Fuck you. Fuck you. Here, oh, they want me to read all this, do they? They want me to read all that to get the pure storyline, all the good stuff. I'll scan it. I'll scan it. That's all I'm doing. I ain't reading shit. Play Dead Space 2. Oh god, I wish I had done Dead Space 2. This had better be worth it. This better be the best goddamn explanation of something ever. No, I'm not reading that garbage.
Drop your sword, Father. You have nothing to be afraid of.
Shall we abandon this then? Shall we lower our heads?
No, never. You taught me that.
Blood is approaching. Old but young. How strange. Shall I drink it? Smite it?
No, Father. He is a friend. Please, rest. I'll take care of it.
Caution, Elizabeth. Deceit runs through these veins.
I know, Father. What took you so long, Jonathan?
Well, funny you should mention that.
Is this...
What?
Really him?
Yes.
Dracula, right?
This is William Marshall.
Oh, no, William.
First Earl of Pembroke, servant of 5 mortal kings, former regent and savior of England. The greatest knight who ever lived, according to some.
And you called him father?
For he gave me eternal life, and much more.
I have so many questions, Elizabeth.
You always had questions.
Oh, of course, I got so many.
Now that I stand before you both, in this vault.
The ending of this game is literally a long conversation.
We still have a few minutes left.
Where are we?
Where are we? What is this place?
This is the Ashbury estate. I inherited the title when I purchased the castle.
Is this your retreat? Something of a secret place?
It's more
How
of a
could anyone love
sanctuary,
this
really.
game?
This is where I take care of my
I was
father,
right. The last boss is actually
ever
a
since he
conversation.
became unwell.
Are you not afraid someone might discover you here? It's not that hard to find.
Do not assume that I would hesitate to silence anyone who tried to reveal my secret. Fortunately, it has rarely come to that.
Why did you flee here?
When you told me I was the healthy carrier, I had nowhere else to go.
You mean you had to return to the real source of this scourge?
Yes, to end it once and for all.
Go back
Will
to
you
London?
go back to London?
No, Jonathan. I do not intend to.
And what of your daughter?
Charlotte is a strong, independent woman who's about to come into money. I took
She
care
don't
of
need no
everything.
man.
Now it's time for her to shape her future.
I have destroyed the disaster, this creature that Harriet Jones had become. The epidemic is no more, and London will recover. In time.
Oh,
The city
it
has
feels
suffered.
good to laugh.
But it will prevail in the end.
A more cynical analysis would be that this is an acceptable catastrophe.
I cannot bear knowing I was the cause of all this. Through the use of my own blood.
No.
This game actually
This
feels like it was
catastrophe
created
the
by a
result of
computer.
Unethical experimentation.
This is a game that Siri
And the
would
will of
design.
a creature so inexplicably evil, she exceeds all the terrible wonders I have seen since my death.
But it was my blood all along. My corrupted blood of hate. The poisoned blood of my father. A healthy carrier. That's all I am.
Oh. Why hide him here?
Why are you hiding William Marshall here?
How could I not take care of him? He sacrificed himself by giving me the only dose of antidote he had.
Okay. Gave you an antidote?
He gave you the antidote.
Yes. And in doing so, he knew he'd have to be confined here. And yet he volunteered. That's how great a man William Marshall was. And still is.
What do you do for him?
He's a
I visit
nursemaid.
him as often as possible. I paint the landscapes he will never see again. I feed him with my blood.
You feed him? You barely sustain yourself on the weak blood of the dying, yet you give him your blood?
After he saved me from the blood rage, I swore I would never kill to feed. He said the same.
Is he dangerous?
Is he dangerous?
What do you think?
Why are we still here?
He is a thirsty
Just to
echo
suffer.
who has not fed in centuries.
By the way, that promise I made
elder
earlier about
vampire,
reacting to videos,
driven by
to
an
the
urge to
announcements, I don't
kill
think I'm going to be capable of that.
spread the blood
Or
of
it's,
hate.
I thought we were going to be done an hour ago.
Can he communicate?
Yes. Sometimes he even seems like the noble knight who saved and raised me. But you know, the malice never fully leaves his eyes.
No redemption, then.
And yet he thinks he has been offered immortality by the angels to protect the feeble and to smite the unholy.
We could cure him.
It's too late. The blood of hate has run for too long. The antidote would not work on him. I tried. Believe me, I tried.
William Marshall infected you. He is the true original carrier.
Yes. But he saved me by sacrificing himself.
Saved you?
Should you buy this
The
game?
tears of angels.
Go for it, why not?
The cleansing of impure blood by an older, more powerful blood. It worked on me, did it not?
Yes. Blood is the definitive key to our species. Scowls, cleansing, lineage. Do you really think it worked?
It has, Jonathan. I was nothing but a beast who took pleasure in slaughter. I roamed across Europe, reaping my bloody crop. It was
Does
the blood of
anyone
hate, but
care
my father's antidote cured
about any of this? Oh, look at all those options.
How did you meet William Marshall?
He was an Ekon for centuries when he found me. He saved me from certain death by making me his progeny.
Why did he choose you?
You should ask him that.
Oh, I get to talk to him next, right?
Not even when he was
Is that what you
infected
just mentioned?
and bit me. He is my father. He raised me. He taught me how to behave.
Who are you, really?
Who are you, really?
How could I answer that? I went through many lives and identities to reach this day. To you, I am Elizabeth Ashbury, and that's all I wish to be.
I respect your design. I must know more. No, tell me more.
I need to know more. I want to know who you really are. Where you were born. Where you lived.
I was born Elizabeth Samantha Mary Englewood in 1551 in Hertfordshire. My parents owned a pub in Hoddesdon. Are you satisfied?
Oh yeah, I gotta choose an option, huh?
What about us?
What do you mean?
You know my feelings towards you, Elizabeth. But you left without a word. So I'm worried about your feelings towards me.
I love you, Jonathan. I've loved you since the moment I saw you rescue poor Mr. Hampton in that filthy slaughterhouse, forgetting the danger as you turned your back, like the newborn fool you were.
Oh, yeah, gotta do this.
You should have told me.
No, Jonathan. The William Marshall myth lies at the heart of so many hostile plans. I could not risk jeopardizing his safety.
So why
What am I doing? I'm playing a better game.
You knew I would follow you. I can't let you go.
Because I know now the blood of hate is still in my veins. No one but I can put an end to this tragedy.
I can help you. You can trust me, Elizabeth.
I know, Jonathan. You have been the most loyal ally these last few weeks. But this is my duty.
Would you
Are they still going? Yeah, they're still
agree
going.
to speak with me? I have so many questions for him.
Go on, Jonathan. But be careful.
Oh, whoa, whoa. Are we talking to that dude now? Oh.
Yes?
So, William. My God. You really are William Marshall. You served Richard the Lionheart and his brother, King John. It is such a privilege.
I'm the best.
to meet
No,
you.
no, don't praise me for this.
Come closer if you want to speak. For my hearing isn't what it used to be.
I think your hearing is fine, sir.
What is it you want then?
Oh, about the tears of the thing.
I found your research on the antidote. The tears of the angels. What ingredients did you use?
Once I understood what the ingredients were, I used the tears of King Richard and the pure blood of the valiant.
Is he saying something important?
Boadicea.
How'd that go?
King Richard and Boadicea. How did you find such relics?
It took me many years to locate their hiding place. Then I had to learn the formula. If I recall, it belonged to an ancient brotherhood. The Order of St. Paul, I believe.
This game is fun.
And did it work?
Yes. The tears cleansed my poor Elizabeth's blackened heart.
It was such a blessing to see her smile again.
Options, about the disaster.
I found and defeated the disaster that was threatening to smite London. You should know that the city is safe for now, Sir William.
Okay, this joke is over.
I call you brother? Did you resist its poison?
Is this game still going on? Yes, it is.
Even a scratch from a beast so evil could endanger you and all those you care for.
Oh, who is the one you defeated?
You also
what has he been
defeated
talking
one
about?
in
I've toned out so
1666.
much.
Who was it?
She was a malicious witch who spread plague throughout the city with her army of rats. She had been hiding in a bakery in Pudding Lane for months when I finally found her.
How did you defeat it?
We fought for hours. In the end, I had to lock her in St. Paul's Cathedral and burn the building down. I wanted to be sure.
I believe there was a singing request made a couple streams ago, right? Well, I'm not gonna sing. Tell me about the blood of hate.
The blood
thing.
of hate. How does it affect you? Do you feel it now?
The blood of hate? Yeah.
Finally.
Oh, that's an ad.
Nothing more than a sneeze.
Shit, stupid ads.
A sneeze held for so long. You could blow a fortress down if you released it.
I think this will make this scene better. Can we talk about vampires?
I am
Vampires. What about them?
Considering your experience, please tell me what you know.
Terrible creatures. I have seen and fought many in my time. Foul
This song is better than this game.
sharp claws and shrieking beaks.
I'd say there's potential.
I have never seen.
Here's the soundtrack the game needs.
What are you talking about?
Of course, you've never seen a creature like them. Vampires are deadly, swift, and implacable.
Hard to do this while choosing options.
Where did you encounter such creatures?
The last time I saw one was in a Celtic temple near Salisbury. A terrible and godforsaken
Everyone press L in
beast
chat.
full of ghosts and pestilence.
Can you speak about the Morrigan?
The Red Queen. What of her?
Woo! Look at all these fun dialogue options we got.
You met her, did you not?
Just once. But she never ceased to sing to me.
Cool place, and they say it gets cooler. Bundled up now, wait until you get older. But the media men beg to differ, judging by the light in your satellite picture. The ice we skate is getting pretty thin. Well, it's getting a swim. It's on fire, how about yours? I'm gonna get a good board. I don't know the words. Now, you're not there. What you run, go play. This is the only way I can think to entertain you guys right now. Do you understand that? There is nothing entertaining going on in this game. This is all we got. Holy God, it's still going.
Only God is my maker. For he created everything on this earth.
Here's the best part of the song.
But Merlin, Michael, is a vampire.
This stream is about to get muted, by the way.
Blood-sucking creature of the night.
I used to drink it from the throat.
What are they talking about? I have not paid attention for the past 10 minutes. Alright, that's enough of that song.
I rely entirely upon my sweet Elizabeth.
Let's see this E3 stuff. Let's check some of that out. Yeah, we got time.
Tell me about Elizabeth. How was she infected?
I do not wish to discuss it.
Please, Sir William. I need to know what
Okay,
the blood of
what
hate
was
is.
Starfield? Bethesda's
is it
next single-player
After
RPG is Starfield, a
defeating the
sci-fi game. Let's read about
disaster in
this.
St. Paul's Cathedral, I returned to
Bethesda
my
told
retreat.
Howard Bethesda's Todd Howard just announced on stage at E3 that the company's next big single-player RPG is an all-new story set in an all-new universe. Here's a very brief trailer. They didn't really go into detail on that, did they?
Where is this retreat you mentioned?
In London, under Temple Church.
Yeah, Bethesda didn't really announce all that much stuff, did they? So, I want to see the Youngblood trailer, though.
While listening to the bell above.
What happened to that dude who did the thing?
The blood of hate had twisted me into a rage-filled man.
Hardcore. Check hardcore gamer for headlines. I might do that.
Too. Forgive me, Elizabeth. I failed you.
You bit her again. Is that how she was infected with the disaster's blood?
What's next on the agenda?
I think I understand now.
Elizabeth fled, and I fell to my knees, begging for forgiveness. I swore I would find a way to make things right.
Did you know? How'd you meet Elizabeth?
How did you meet Elizabeth?
Times were tough. I had awakened to protect the land from a new plague.
Is this guy describing an entirely different game at this point?
Singing for her death to
Here we go. This is perfect.
I chose to save her.
When was that?
It was so long ago. A few years after Elizabeth of England and Catherine of France established their alliance.
That was
against
MS23K yelling end.
What did you do?
I raised her as my progeny. After she left to see the world, I rebuilt her deceased parents' inn.
Oh.
For a time.
Shut up.
Those were good years.
Okay, what's next? What do you want to talk about? Get it all off your chest.
Did you really sacrifice yourself to save her?
That was the only righteous path. The blood of hate made me betray her. I am at peace here.
Lost Continent, that's
I
an
can
entire
think
movie,
about what
dude.
I've
No
done
way I'm playing
and
that.
How I failed.
It's still going, isn't it?
Do you not want to be cured?
No. This hunger is mine. I would feel empty without it. It has been part of me for so long. All I want is quiet.
He's just...
Silence.
Please. You agreed...
You agreed to be confined.
Yes. Once I was sure she was cured, I asked to be locked down here. I deserve it. The world needs it.
I'm completely... I have the entire internet in the palm of my hands. I can't think of anything funny left to do.
We could set you free. Let you out. Isn't that what you want?
I pray for the day I'll see the sky again. I have all but forgotten its colors. I could walk and do so many things beneath the stars. But I doubt it will be wise to release me.
Then will you stay here and repent?
Elizabeth told me it will not be long now. I cannot wait to feel the sweet caress of her hand on my cheek after so long as she releases me.
Seen things people wouldn't believe.
Has the time come?
Attack ships on fire off shore.
Why not unleash me then? To see the sky
I
a
watched
final time.
things glitter in the dark near 10,000 gates.
You already are the sky, and all its stars.
I'm not defeated.
All those
For I welcome the sword you bear, for it is mine.
You were never defeated, my lord.
Like tears.
There's an ending. Oh, but they're doing something. Oh, yeah, good for you.
Farewell, father.
I don't think it's possible to make something worse than this.
Jonathan.
What do you mean?
I can't stand what I've become. This healthy carrier, as you put it. The flames will purify the poison that runs in my veins.
No! I won't allow this to happen.
I am death, Jonathan. Wherever I go.
Is she?
I can't stand it.
I am Dr. Jonathan Reed, champion of Myrddin, chosen to save England from the vampire epidemic. I could cure you.
What do you mean?
We are creatures of blood,
Oh,
Elizabeth.
just let her
Everything about
burn.
us is in our blood. With time, I could perfect the antidote William Marshall gave you. Trust me, for time is on our side.
That is a risk I cannot take, Jonathan. I won't bring another such disaster into
I'm gonna
this
play this
world.
game 3 more
Elizabeth,
times to get the endings.
No, trust me.
No.
I can save you.
How could I trust you, Jonathan? Have you not betrayed me?
I had choices to make.
No, I did exactly what
forgive
you wanted.
And that is my choice.
How did I betray her?
I love you.
Then let me go now.
Wait! No!
I feel nothing. How did I get a bad ending? I killed very few people in this game. I specifically tried to kill as few people as possible. I don't care. If I need to get a good ending, I'll download it off YouTube.
One prayer for the summoned,
Who cares?
called by this song. Child born from darkness, whose path he must find. Now the song is sung, and your path chosen. England is safe, but the cost was dire. Blood and tears, both parched by cleansing flames.
Who cares?
You've
That
lost your
there was no
way,
good
my
ending to this game
champion,
because you have to sit
bittersweet.
through that garbage.
I am moved to pity as I feel your rampant rage void of purpose or meaning. My queen sleeps once again, and I'll soon join her slumber. Until
There's
at
no
last
ending
she
that would make that
rises,
good worth
woken
sitting
by
through.
the hunger never fed.
He's crying blood. I'm crying blood. All right. They got off easy. I had to sit through it. Oh, that is a beautiful sight. Holy. Ah. The good ending is when you turn off the game. That was I'm gonna be honest with you guys. That is the worst ending of any game I have ever played. That broke so many rules of how you make a game and what you're supposed to do that it's astonishing. I don't even know how they approved this garbage to just have an hour of talking at the end after a really lame final boss. And they're playing the credits really slow too. I don't think you can make something worse than that. I don't care how bad. At least as long as you don't go to 2 hours of talking at the end, it would not be that. Yeah, that's the only way you can make that worse. Have more talking about just the most boring, god-awful garbage possible that you do not care for because the game hasn't gotten you invested. I have no words. That's how I feel. That it's that bad. How do you actually describe something that bad? We need a whole. The English language is not actually capable of describing my emotional state. I was just checked out. I couldn't take it anymore. I made the joke about 2 hours ago that the final boss of this game would be a really long conversation, and that was supposed to be a funny joke, and I thought it was funny at the time. Turns out it was true. And it shouldn't have been true. That should have remained a joke. Funny little stream joke that got you guys to LOL or LUL in chat. But it was just an omen of what was to come. You know, we don't need to see the credits, do we? No, we do not. Look at that. We're done playing the game. But for you, now for you guys, that is literally all you'll have to ever experience of Vampire until the video comes out. And then you'll never have to think of this game again. Unfortunately, I gotta spend the next week writing a script that makes fun of this game. Oh, it's gonna be fun. So much fun. And then I get to wash my hands of it and never think of this game again. This is the biggest disappointment of the year for me, by far. I don't think there's going to be another game that's going to piss me off more than this game has now managed to achieve. 25 bits. Thank you guys for all the bits you've donated over this. I don't know why any of you donated anything to me over the course of this playthrough. This is... Somehow I managed to entertain you, though, somehow. I don't know how. I struggled through that to just keep you guys entertained. I apparently succeeded somewhat. So thank you for that. Thank you to all those who stuck through me with through this shit show. That's gonna be it for tonight. I don't have anything left. I left nothing on the road. I just ran a marathon. So, I'm gonna work on getting this game out, this video out, so I can be done with it and move on to something far better, hopefully. Strangely, the next game I'm probably gonna send might end up being another Don't Nod game. That little thing they just announced today that comes out in like 2 weeks. So we'll see. Alright, so thank you to all those who donated bits tonight. And also thank you to those who subscribed or resubscribed. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you to my mod team for being an excellent group of people and keeping the chat nice and civil for me. Finally, thank you to you guys who showed up tonight and... We went through an ordeal. We're like guys in foxholes after this. We went through an experience. We didn't play a game, guys. We became men. Alright, guys. Enjoy the rest of the E3 announcements over the course of the week. I'm sure there'll be some great stuff. I might, if I get time. I think I'm usually working whenever E3 announcements go on. If I have time, I might consider streaming something like maybe Sony's conference if I'm at home and have time for it. Who knows? Not gonna promise it, though. Anyways, I'll be working on the video, get that out, and we'll do something actually far better. Enjoy the rest of your night or evening, whatever time zone you're in, and I'll see you when I see you. Good night, everyone.